I, F27, have a lot of stories about my mom. They don't fall neatly into the entitled category, but she is currently trying to leverage my inheritance for a relationship, so it wouldn't be entirely inaccurate. I just find her insane antics to be extremely entertaining, and I hope you will as well. I'm starting with some secondhand info from my brother, since I was a baby super young for most of this part. I have some of my own stories to share next post, but these are some new-to-me revelations that fit what I know of her character well. My parents divorced when I was a baby. It was around Christmas time. My brother told me that Nicky went crazy and started knocking down all the decorations. He yelled at her because it was dangerous and I was apparently in the room. He was worried about all the broken glass. Later, he said that he would wait outside for her to pick him up for visitation, but she never showed. She swears up and down that my dad tricked him into thinking it was her weekend when it wasn't, but I don't buy it. Some clear communication would have nipped that right in the bud. Plus, Nicky always seemed to try something with visitation. I didn't have the context to understand why Dad couldn't drive 2 hours to come take me trick or treating, but she sure let me wait for him every other year when she knew he couldn't make the trip. There were multiple times that she would plan something fun on his visitation, and then ask me what I'd prefer to do. Anything she could to try turning me against him. At one point, we were at a church Christmas party, and my dad came to pick me up for his Christmas year. I was walking around with my friends, and he just showed up. I has absolutely no context for the situation, and excitedly ran up to him just happy to see my dad. He was taking me out the doors when Nicky spotted us and absolutely flipped out. She had me convinced that he was trying to kidnap me. Dad could have obviously handled the situation better, but she always had the superpower of getting under everyone's skin. That includes my stepdad, who admittedly had a drinking problem. When it was just me around him, though, he was a happy drunk. Nicky, however, loved to push his buttons. They'd get into huge screaming matches. They both slammed things around. She threw an ashtray at him once and dented our wall. The last straw was when he threw his steel-toed boot at the ground and it bounced and hit her. Don't get me wrong, I'm not condoning his behavior. I am saying that when Nicky decided to take me to a battered woman's shelter, it was nothing short of emotional blackmail. We were back within the week. Later, she asked 12-year-old me if she should stay with my stepdad. I said that I thought they would make better friends, and they split up. His drinking never improved, unfortunately. There are only 2 times I remember her going crazy on me in that time period. One was when she pushed me into a dog cage. Not literally inside of it. She just shoved me over and I fell. I still have the scar on the back of my hand from where it caught the corner of the metal. I can't remember what she was on about at the time. It was always something with her. I do remember the other time. I was very young, but it always stuck in my head. We had went into a store, and when we came back to the car, I saw my lip gloss on the ground by my door. I must have dropped it when I got out, so I picked it up. Nicky went off and smacked the crap out of me. She threw me into the car, yelling that I'm not supposed to pick up trash off the ground. I was desperately trying to explain through tears that it was my lip gloss. For those of you who might be wondering, Nicky is a name that I'm using as a jab at her. She always said that she hated that name. I'm pretty sure my mom is bipolar, and she hates the name Nicky. She split with my dad, along with my brother, when I was little. When I was 12, she asked what she should do about my stepdad, and they separated. Never did draw up the divorce papers. Something I didn't mention last time, but my dad had lost visitation rights by now. Between Nicky calling CPS every other week and a few dumb decisions on my part, she had enough to take him back to court. She convinced me to tell them I didn't want to see my dad anymore, which obviously still makes me feel guilty. When we moved out of my stepdad's house, I started to visit there instead. He was my favorite person. I would sit and ask questions as he reloaded ammo. We'd go to the range, watch our favorite shows together, etc. When I started smoking, he found out. I was rolling my own with old tobacco, and he got me a pack so I didn't burn the house down. You might have mixed feelings about that, but you'll get to hear about Nicky finding out next time. Between going there and my extracurricular activities, I was barely at my actual house. Nicky was flipping between overbearing and trying to be my best friend. I never had much respect for her, which you can chalk up to her actions or the fact that I was a teenager. Probably a mix of both. I just found reasons to be gone. Church youth groups, the library, wood carving class, friends' houses. When I met my boyfriend, I would go straight to his house after school and eat dinner, watch movies with his family. Nicky was gone a lot too. She had to get a job now that we were alone and went to college for a time. I can't remember what the job was, but I remember she came home late. I once spent a night walking around our small town going to friends' houses and playing Xbox. When I got home, it was around 6 a.m. I started up towards bed when Nicky got back, and I just turned around and went back downstairs. She had been known to start talking to me when I was literally asleep and wake me up, so there was no point in trying. I made a 2-liter of coffee and went back out. This part of my life with her wasn't too bad. Nicky picked stupid things to fight me about, like that time I called the cops when she took $20 I made because I wouldn't do the dishes. Never mind the fact that I made that money selling hydros to my brother. He'd moved into the duplex next to us at one point, and that became my hangout place. Most of the time, though, Nicky was trying to be the cool mom. She was very anti-establishment and would back me up anytime I had issues at school. This was also the point she became Wiccan and went off the deep end about mercury in vaccines, baby stem cells in our food, and chemtrails. How the government was brainwashing the youth into being mindless zombies, and how I needed to think for myself. Most of it was just cringe. One night, when Nicky got smashed, I suggested she join me walking around town at night. She proceeded to invite my boyfriend by going to his house and throwing rocks at his window. He didn't come down, but we continued to the park. She was so loud and fell down every time I let go of her hand. My now husband and I still joke about it since he missed out. Before freshman year, we moved to a bigger college town. I still visited my stepdad, and I found an MMA gym to hang out at after school. They didn't start class until 6 p.m., so I hung out with the computer club until then. By sheer luck, my boyfriend's family also moved there, so I was still barely home. Nicky started having issues with me being gone all the time, which was fair to be honest. She didn't care before that point, so I chalked it up to her finding more reasons to start fights. It didn't stop me from telling her that I was going to school on holiday weekends or just skipping entirely. Once, I walked across town because I forgot there were no buses running. It was one of the fireworks holidays. I called my boyfriend, and it turned out his family was going to a lake out of town to go boat jet ski. They came and picked me up so I could come. Towards the end of the trip, I started getting super paranoid that Nicky would be getting off work and expect me home from school. I wish I had just stayed and enjoyed it, because she didn't really care when I got home and told her. She was never consistent with me. I eventually learned how to use that to my advantage. Really, I was not a good kid. What do you expect from a 15-year-old with no respect for their parent and barely any supervision? Nicky told my school that I wasn't allowed to date black people, so I laughed at her for asking me for life advice as my black friend hid under the laundry in my room. I was downright spiteful. Enough time had passed that I saw her custody battle with Dad for what it was. I still believed that my stepdad was better without her, but it was clear that he was devastated. She had taught me to think for myself, all right. I thought she was the trashiest person I had ever met. One New Year's she had gone out, and so I had some friends over to drink and smoke. When she got home, she had a guy with her. She proceeded to go into my room and lay in bed absolutely smashed. I tried to get her up and out, but she wouldn't budge. She just kept telling me that she needed to lay down for a minute. I left, but the dude she brought with her went in and closed the door. I am not even going to comment on the shady consent related to that statement. My boyfriend and I got her back for sleeping with someone in my bed, though. Once, he left Nicky at some college bar across the river, coming back to his apartment drunk. I didn't actually know where she was, since I couldn't get a hold of her, but I didn't feel comfortable alone with him. About the time Richard started to playfully push me down was when I texted my boyfriend to come and get me. When he confirmed that he was there, I made an excuse to leave the room and bolted. As soon as I got in the car, I looked at my boyfriend's very Christian mom and told her to, "Get me the fuck out of here." We were on our way back to Nicky's so I could get stuff for school in the morning, when I finally heard from her. It was so embarrassing having to go pick her up. I had more problems with Richard, of course, especially after his son developed a crush on me as well. Now Nicky herself was another issue entirely. She once came back from the bar to yell at me about not doing the laundry. I got pretty spiteful, waiting until the load in the washer was ready to switch over before I came back to the house. By that time, she had called the police to report me as a runaway. I actually requested for them to keep me overnight, but they don't get paid enough to deal with family squabbles. They did, however, use a breathalyzer on Nicky when she came to pick me up. The knowledge that she had to leave her car there for the night was a small victory. I was so glad to have visits with my stepdad. He drank a lot with Nicky gone, but he was a happy drunk without her antagonizing him. This was also around the time that K2 was super big. Since they kept changing the formula to get around production laws, he would buy the chemicals online to mix with paint thinner and make his own. That shit was scary. I stopped dealing after an incident at school, where a kid got wheeled out on a stretcher. Maybe that's what did it. Maybe the drinking. My brother and I have even wondered if Nicky would want to stop the divorce that badly. She did mention his pension not that long ago. Whatever the case, I didn't know that he wasn't sleeping the next time I got dropped off for a visit. He worked second shift, so it was typical for him to be in bed until 6 some nights. I waited until then to check on him, but I knew something was wrong before then. Can you believe that I called Nicky before the cops? For some reason, I was worried that they would find the stuff he used to make spice. They did ask a bunch of medical questions I couldn't answer, like what medications Dad might be taking. Thankfully, my grandpa had shown up by then. I helped him gather the guns to take with him, which seemed sensible. I still wonder if I should have told him about the Glock in the glove compartment, or just taken it for myself. After all, I never saw anything from that house again. After a few hours, my mom still wasn't there. My boyfriend's grandparents still lived close, so I went to wait there. I can't remember what her excuse was. Nicky claims that Grandpa took everything, while my brother is pretty sure Richard and her pawned all the reloading and machinist tools. Death and greed, am I right? She picked the dumbest songs for the funeral and even wanted me to sing. I couldn't bring myself to. The man in the coffin looked too gaunt to be my dad. I flinched as they did the 21 gun salute, and things just went downhill from there. I started talking to my actual dad again, and I was barely in school. Though Nicky wanted to pretend to be responsible all of the sudden, I learned that being reported as late and or absent to one or more classes was easy to explain away. Some days it seemed like the only way I could do anything. Others, she was back to being chill. Next time, I'll get into what happened once we moved in with Richard. Until then, and hopefully not too long of a wait this time,